Welcome to the Fireside Chat today. We're going to start off with a little bit of an introduction for each of us. And I was going to start with Alan. When you introduce yourself, talk about your background, and also how do you define accessibility?
Yeah, so thank you. It's great to be here. So thank you everybody for joining us here and online. My name is Alan Foley. I am a professor at Syracuse University, and I primarily teach in the Disability Studies program there. My interests revolve around issues of access to technology and disabilities, so kind of the intersection of disability and technology. I'm not a kind of a technical AT specialist, but I teach classes in universal design and disability studies. And you said, what was my? I'm sorry.
How do you personally define accessibility?
Yeah. So it's ask a PhD a question and get it. No, so. When I'm teaching, I usually tell my students, that accessibility is, about ensuring that something is, approachable and usable and available for the broadest range of people. But I'm very interested in this conversation because I think that will be kind of certainly maybe expanding some of our conceptions of what accessibility means. Certainly it means just being able to use the technology, but also being able to have it, to have access to it.
And then Tiffany, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also provide what you define accessibility as.
Thank you. And Alan, I loved your last point about the opportunity to have access, because it's very, very important. And my name is Tiffany Wilson, and for the last 15 years, I lived and worked in Alaska, and I provided access or assistive technology in many, many different environments. I worked at the federally funded State Assistive Technology Center there, and we provided services to all ages and all abilities. And Alaska is one of the most largest, Texas, rural and geographically complex states. And providing AT there was quite difficult. You learn a lot, you learn to become a jack of all trades. But more recently, so I worked at the AT Center for 10 years, and last year I made a quality of life change and moved to beautiful Eastern Oregon, and now I am an independent consultant, and here talking about equitable accessibility, which brings me to how I define access. And I tend to see it from an assistive technology center point of view, where assistive technology or access is any feature, system, service, tool used to assist an individual in overcoming a challenge. But furthermore, and I believe this is close to your last point, I believe in functional access, which means that it should support the end user for the service or product to be successful. So if your service or product is not accessible, maybe it's not functionally accessible.
And then for myself, I'm Jen Strickland or Jennifer Strickland, depending on which one of me you get. And I've been designing and developing and for the web and print and other mediums for 3 decades. So I do research, strategy, design, development, culture change, a lot of design thinking. I'm also a musician, so if you see any weird pictures with a big blonde afro, yeah, that is really me. I'm also Black, Native Mexican, and white in a body that looks like this, which is, I look a lot like a white woman with reddish brown curly hair to my shoulders. and very curvy. Even when I was thinner, I always had big shoulders, big hips, thick thighs. So I never quite fit in with what others around me looked like because we lived in weird places. My father was military. We moved every 4 years. I didn't meet a Jewish person until I moved to Boston in 1995. Black people, my best friend in Germany was half black, half white. They had like the Brady Bunch family. So I didn't really realize how varied the world was because it wasn't around me until I finally got out into urban places. And things were very ugly in some situations. But in addition to those things, I also was the first person in my family to go to college at that time. Not the first person to graduate, but the first person to go. I worked full time while I went to school. And I also am disabled. I have the Schedule A letter, I have a traumatic brain injury and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. For the US, we'll call it PTSD because they don't want to talk about the other. So I don't look like any of the things, but I have a life full of the things, and I care and love people who have additionally of these things. I've witnessed a lot of that sort of stuff. And I have fought for years with folks around the definition of accessibility where they say, no, it's access for people with disabilities. No, it's access for everyone. If you live out in the middle of nowhere and they don't have fiber optic cables and your internet comes through the phone line, access is a concern. If your reading level is not XYZ, you also need access. All of these sorts of things. For me, it's that way. But there's also like all kinds of other ways that people define access. But here at this conference, we typically talk a lot more about people with disabilities because people with disabilities deserve some focused attention as well. So our next question is, how do you define equity? Tiffany, do you want to start for that one?
Sure. I was thinking about this, and I think I'm just going to keep it short and sweet, which is probably good because it took a little longer on the first one. But I define equity as creating a world where everyone can thrive how they choose.
And how about you, Alan?
Yeah, I consider myself short and sweet, so let's. I can't remember if I mentioned, I work and teach at Syracuse University, and Syracuse is a city that has, one of the greatest concentrations of segregated racialized poverty in the U.S. And as do many, particularly Rust Belt, kind of northern, tier U.S. cities. And so I think something that I think about and talk about is that equity is moving beyond, equality. It's not that everybody gets the same or the same, resources, but that it is really more focused on, social justice and the opportunities to participate, and whatever really it takes to achieve that. I think when we had a pre-conference Zoom chat, and in our conversation about this, I got to, I don't remember if it was Tiffany or Jennifer mentioned something that got me, thinking about, that, an equity approach is I think, an equality approach ends up, kind of giving everybody the same starting, point and the same finishing point in theory without considering everything else in that individual's life, what is going on for them. And so I know we'll be talking a little bit further about that. But so, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question explicitly, but yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I look to Antoinette Carroll. She has a company called the Creative Reaction Lab, and they provide trainings on a whole range of diversity, equity, inclusion topics. And she highlights the difference between equality and equity as equality is equal access and equity is equal outcomes. So I think a lot of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation illustration that many people may have heard of or seen, where there are 4 different people and they're all given a bike. That's equal. Everyone gets a bike. Oprah, everyone gets a car. Everyone here today does not get a car. But for equity, I mean, so the 4 people, one is very short, one is short and sweet like Alan, one is tall and thin like Tiffany, one is heavy set like me, and another person is in a wheelchair. But all of us get exactly the same bike. No small, no large, no different. In equity, the shorter person would get a bike that suits their size, the taller person would get a bike that suits their size, I'd get a bike that suits my frame, and the person in a wheelchair might get a completely different device, scooter of some sort that maybe allows them to do the same things that a bike does. And so for me, those sorts of things are really helpful. And then how do we talk about equitable accessibility for each of us? Who wants to grab that one?
I can go. I like being called tall at 5'2". I do have to say that.
It's all relative, right?
Equitable accessibility to me is when a person has not just the information and access to something, but also the autonomous choice.
If you'll indulge me, I wrote down some comments so I wouldn't forget. So I'm going to be looking at my phone, but it's so I can refer to my notes. So equitable accessibility, and I think that I think we had a little conversation about, what does that mean? And it's a great topic. But I would say that I kind of come at this from a kind of a critical perspective, with an emphasis on justice, inclusion, the dismantling of systemic and systematic barriers that impede folks with disabilities from fully participating in society. It's not just about access, it's about reimagining social, physical, and digital environments. And so I think that there's, for those of you who are familiar with the term intersectional, it's about addressing and recognizing the intersectional identities that folks have and the ways that various barriers are kind of affect them. And so one of the things I think that we encounter a lot in my kind of work and life and environment is that we have lots of talk about diversity and equity and inclusion. And disability is kind of sometimes not included in that, even though those people of, that disability happens across other identities as well. And it kind of gets left out. And so when I think about equitable accessibility, I think really about an intersectional approach that is really rooted in looking at the kind of systemic issues that present barriers to people.
And I'm right there aligned with you. In addition to my work at the MITRE Corporation, I also am with the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. And I was an invited expert to the Accessibility Guidelines Working Group that creates the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which we throw around and talk about as WCAG. But I am the chair of the Equity Community Group. And we just started within the past year, and the first thing we did was start defining equity. And there is a definition on a website by NACE Web, N-A-C-E Web, that talks about equity as acknowledging the differences in which all of the different places that we start with. And one of the most frustrating things I often hear from people is, no, the world is a meritocracy. I pulled myself up with my bootstraps. I earned everything I have today. And I say, what about the people that didn't even have bootstraps? What about the people who can't reach bootstraps? We are not all starting from the same place. We have systems of oppression, as Alan has alluded to, that have resulted in tremendous wealth gap, tremendous power gaps, and systems that keep people entrenched in inequity and injustice and lack of liberation, as well as disability. And I know disability is not a bad word, but when you take it apart and the dis, it always starts off like it's a negative. But it's not a negative, it's a facet. It's a reality of life. And for any of us who manage to live long enough, we will all be disabled at some point in our life, but we'll also be temporarily and situationally impacted or disabled. And so these are all factors besides race, economics, education, location, immigration, so many pieces of the wheel of identity that makes up each and every one of us. What we physically look like, what we're carrying inside us, sorry about that, and what people can't see. And equitable accessibility is making sure that no matter where you're coming from, you're all still able to access it and, like I said, have the equitable outcome, like the quality outcome. Not the input, the output, but the outcome. And then we touched on intersectionality. So how might intersecting identities impact access to and experiences with technology? Alan, do you want to start with this one? He gave a great talk on Tuesday about AI and the use of it for folks with disability, with developmental disabilities.
Intellectual disability, yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that that's something that certainly has been coming up in this conference a lot, particularly around AI. So, you know, with respect to, you know, sorry, I lost my notes here. Intersectional identities, racial, gender identity, disability, economic class. There are a lot of ways, I think, in which this happens. Certainly, there is like the digital divide, kind of just the access to technology, right? There's also, and I mentioned this, I think, briefly in my other presentation, but you know, bias and representation, both in just the design of technology, who has you know, access to being, you know, part of the process of designing and developing technology. But then also, and this is, you know, come up in a couple of sessions I've been to, is the idea of bias and representation in AI, kind of what's coming out of it, how have these models been trained, how do they represent or recognize disabled people, disabled bodies, as far in, and or, you know, people of color, women, issues around surveillance. And being subject to surveilling technologies. I mentioned, you know, where I live in Syracuse, New York. There is one area of the city that's highly surveilled. There are police cameras. There are, I can't remember what they're called, but this, you know, system that recognizes like gunshots. It's not the neighborhood I live in. It's not the neighborhood I live in where there are a bunch of white middle-class folks who work at Syracuse University, but it's on at the southwest side of the city. Folks who have, I can choose to participate in my grocery store's rewards program, where they surveil what it is I buy and make suggestions to me. However, if I'm, you know, use public assistance, I may be required to be surveilled on what it is I purchase, what it is I eat, be subject to drug testing. And so where you are in society actually plays a real big role in what you are subject to. So I think that kind of these issues of bias, of surveillance, of access, you know, particularly with respect to like the digital divide, was something, Tiffany, you spoke about as well. It's not just in urban contexts, it's in, you know, rural and remote contexts as well, are really, I think, just important things for us.
Experiencing barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And you're right, Alan. And you know, in Alaska, because it's so varying, you know, the urban areas are experiencing different things from the rural areas. And I love all the points that you're making. I have a confession to make. Before I joined the panel with Alan, I found him and then I sent him an email requesting all of his journal articles that he wrote. And so I've been reading them and I was really excited to attend your presentation. But I was 5 minutes late and it was full.
I know, wow, I was shocked.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So I'll be asking for more information later if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So what it means to me about the intersectionality is, you know, working at a state-funded assistive technology center, providing services and demonstrations to all ages, all abilities. So, you know, 1 second I might be providing a low vision magnifier demonstration and the next second I'm demonstrating video relay services in sign language. It varies. And so I have seen how everyone is different, and I could get a request for a demonstration of JAWS and have 2 people in a day, and I'll demonstrate it to them and all of their options in that category. And each person is going to make a different choice, and each person is going to use that software differently. And it is their choice. And we should promote our equipment distribution programs where people have autonomy and choice, and we're not making those decisions for them because it's what the program funds, it's what I have access to, it's what I know. Maybe I like that program. And I want people to start talking about bias in assistive technology distribution. I want us to start talking about how commercial off-the-shelf products weren't made to become distributed in assistive technology programs. I want to talk about how we're protecting people's privacy and security when we should be assisting people to create the accounts, but who creates the accounts? Who accepts the terms and conditions? And I know that that's a wide variety, but I think it's just really showing that intersection of how accessibility is this whole world. And assistive technology has 13 domains, and that's more than just web or information and communication technology.
You know, something just really quickly, I'm sorry, Jennifer, just I didn't want to forget, but that you mentioned when we were talking earlier, that got me thinking about is how so much technology now is, you know, a subscription service.
Yes.
Right? And so you were
Yes.
just kind of alluding to that. It's that, you know, do you have the means or the infrastructure,
Yes.
you know, to have a credit card, to have control over your credit card, to be able to sign up for
Yes.
a recurring service. And so as so much becomes living in the cloud and software as service, that it does, you asked a really great question about how to, you know, provision iPads on a project I did in Kenya. And I was like, I don't remember how we did that, but it was not easy, right?
It's
and
not.
so, you know, those are those kinds of issues that, you know,
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
You're getting me excited. I'm about to start getting my big marker and, you know, marching around about access and rights. But you're so right. Thank you for bringing up the subscription model. So, you know, think about how I'm working at an assistive technology center. I have government funds to purchase a software for somebody. I can purchase that first year, but I also have to consider, one, is the company going to allow the government to purchase that 1 year? Some people do, some people don't, because they just want the credit card and it to be renewed. And also I have to consider, can this individual afford it? But it's not my choice to make. I provide the options, but what is the ethics of recommending a device when someone can't pay for it?
You've both sort of touched on the things that I would raise. One of the weird coincidences is Alan and I are both affiliated with Syracuse. I'm a Master's of Public Administration grad student at the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs, and he's a professor at Syracuse. And there are things I've learned there that have given me more foundation in the idea of ethics. And we have a lot of things around accessibility and technology and just the world that we live in that make a lot of cultural assumptions around the status quo's ideas of what is right and what is wrong. Alan talked a moment there about, I think you were alluding to things like food stamps, and we limit what people can buy, and we monitor what they buy with those food stamps instead of giving them the autonomy to choose what they need for themselves and their families. There have been some changes with some SNAP, which is another public assistance like WIC here in the United States, where people are given amounts of money to buy groceries and such. And they switched from doing it once a month to doing it every 2 weeks, so people could eat fresher food, fresh vegetables, milk, meat, instead of having to buy everything canned or frozen. And there was a cultural thing and something else that I was going to talk about around equity. You also talked, Tiffany, about the different software subscriptions and products, and when people with disabilities sign up for a lot of these, some people may not be able to fill out the forms for themselves, so someone like Tiffany or a caregiver may be filling it out for them and making a lot of assumptions for that individual that maybe that person would really choose otherwise. But do we take the time to allow the person what they need to have equitable understanding of their rights and what they're actually signing up for? I do want to be mindful of time, and we did prepare a quite lengthy list, so I'm going to move to a couple of them. But I'd love to give the audience some ideas that they can walk away with, so or take with them into the work that they do. I'd love to know how people might handle the resistance to accessibility and equity, and that anything that has been helpful to either of you, and then I'll chime in as well in your work around equity, accessibility, equitable accessibility. Tiffany, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all of the points that you're making about accessible forms and that barrier to entry. And when I work with individuals who may be resistant at first, and I often did because as being at the AT Center and providing information and awareness, we were often brought into organizations that got in trouble. And, often that's a tense environment. But what I learned is to always come at it with a level of understanding and curiosity. And usually those individuals aren't able to see past their own barriers sometimes of, I must do this one thing for work and it was functional and so it's coming at it and let's go in and let's pull out all their concerns first. And I show empathy and understanding, and then I show them how to take that step to accessibility and help them bridge that gap. Because often what I learned is, we are all in a echo chamber of accessibility. You know, and we all think that everybody understands what the word accessibility means, or that new hashtag A11Y, which is 13 letters, 11 letters brought down. You know, most everyday people don't know what accessibility is. What does that look like? And so getting from that level of understanding to that level of change is understanding their concerns, their needs, and then painting a picture of what it looks like so then they know how to build that bridge so we can change access together.
And how about you, Alan?
Yeah, you know, I think it's the kind of preaching to the choir probably here at this conference to some point. But, you know, I think that, you know, I think a point that certainly I want to make is that, you know, from my own experience, that it has been kind of you know, a continual growth process, and I'm constantly finding kind of ways in which my thinking about something is limited or lacking perspective. And so I think that there is, like, you know, this you know, reflexive part of it. I think if I could just kind of sum it up in one word, it's that, you know, recognizing and remembering that we live in an ableist society, and that work is ongoing, and whether that means that we are engaged as allies or advocates or self-advocates, that it is, you know, it's still ongoing, that, you know, we can't, I think, you know, fall into the trap that, oh, progress is being made. And, you know, I'll give kind of an example from my own, you know, fairly recent work context, where, you know, we had a federally funded grant project. Part of it was that we were partnering with an organization in the community and involving self-advocates with intellectual disability who are working then on campus. And there were even just every day there was something that would, you know, come up to make it very difficult to, you know, to include people. Things like the university, how its policies around parking, HR requirements around sexual harassment training, which, you know, I understand, you know, but the format of doing the sexual harassment training was sit here in front of this 25-minute video, and then at the end of it, there is going to be a test in which you have to answer a series of multiple choice and true-false questions based on arcana that, you know, from the video. And if you don't pass this, you can't get paid. Being able to participate in a research project at the university and go through a research training, which again is, that whole process is just full of assumptions about who can be a researcher, what is knowledge, who can generate knowledge, who can be involved. And so that project has involved a lot of pushing back, and thankfully I was working with a lot of really, you know, committed and you know, energetic and passionate people who, you know, one of our doctoral students sat with folks and worked with them through the sexual harassment and bias trainings, but we couldn't get an alternative to that, right? So I think that it's, you know, again, like I said, if I, you know, could sum up all my many words in one word, it would be ableism, and really recognizing the kind of pervasive and insidious nature of it, and you know, continuing that work.
I often reference the isms that schism, and ableism would be one of them, racism, sexism, et cetera, and the barriers in which the barriers that they create for all of us. They also, just so we're clear, the status quo, the people who have the power, your experience, if you're here, or you're listening, or you know some of them, they're also experiencing barriers because of their own stigma, their own bias. They're losing out on learning from people that aren't like them. And that is a tremendous loss. It's also a tremendous loss to our world that would benefit from equitable, accessible, inclusive, respectful innovative practices like radical participatory research, radical participatory design, etc., that Victor Udoea, Udoewa, writes a lot about. I'm very grateful to know him. He's made a huge difference on my life, and I've worked with other people that also care deeply about equity and accessibility. I had a white, abled man who was in a position just like mine at a previous employer, and whenever I wrote accessibility issue tickets, I got fight. They would go to him and complain about that crazy woman and telling me my code has got all these issues. And then he would have to explain to them, she's right. These are the issues. She's documented the impact. She's documented how the code is and what will happen, and she's documented fixes. She's provided the standards that align with those, and she's right. But it was sexism and ableism that made my job full of a lot more conflict than his job. And I've already had conversations here at the conference with Matt May and Adrian Roselli, who also acknowledge they can, like Adrian specifically, can be grumpy and very outspoken, but people like me and others have to find a way to not make people uncomfortable. But I think the message that we all, whether we're talking about equitable accessibility or accessibility, we all need to have the world understand you're going to be uncomfortable when you talk with us.
Yes.
And that discomfort is growing pains. And I would love to see everyone have an attitude of infinite learning, the curiosity that Tiffany talked about, and that you also, Alan, talked about, where people need to be learning from one another, always learning. You're going to make mistakes. I've made them multiple times already here sitting on the stage. Right, Alex? As I keep hitting my microphone. And when I said walking. But let's have some self-compassion, and let's have compassion for others, and respect, grace and respect with the entire world around us, and know that we're all a work in progress, and we're all slowly becoming disabled, and we're all dealing with barriers, and we're including the loss of knowledge that people have from historically excluded identity groups. And so we are managing, I believe, to end right on time.
1 minute?
Yep. So, in one word or two words, your future for equitable accessibility.
I wanted to tag on to the end of that, Jim, because it was so great when you were talking. Everything you've said is great, but it really hit home that growing pains and making people uncomfortable. But y'all, change is uncomfortable. Change is hard, and we have to reflect on our own internalized ableism and on our own discomfort. So maybe we should be asking ourselves, why am I uncomfortable? Instead of trying to reflect that back to the person who is trying to assist you in making this beautiful world to change access together. And I got so excited, I just lost the question, but I'm going to end with that.
That's okay. That was fabulous. How about you, Alan? How would you like to end?
I don't think I have anything to add to what Tiffany said, so I think that's a good, ending point. I'll just distract from it.
Thank you all for watching, for coming today. If you see any of us around, if you hear any of our voices, feel free to talk. Let's learn together. Let's get uncomfortable.
I like that.
Thank you. That was Equitable Accessibility with Jennifer Strickland, Tiffany Wilson, and Alan Foley.